Hey everyone, we're back now, blog slash podcast number 6. And I'm really excited to do this one because we're changing the content or changing the topic up a little bit from what we did in the first 5. And I love talking about this stuff. And I really hope that answering these questions is helpful to those out there who have these burning questions going on in their minds. So just a real quick recap. We launched Pugh Leadership Academy this year. It is after years of building our practice, blazing our own trail, because we never really found the consultant or thought leader that really was aligned with us. Today we have what we call a dream practice. Melanie owns it. It brings her joy. It's self-managed. We're fee for service. We have these young, really awesome doctors who do majority of the work and love their associateship. We have a team of staff that find meaning in their work, and our patients are fans of the practice who many of them want to be part of the practice. They like kind of fit in with want to be part of the team, so to speak. And so what we've started to do is we've launched Pugh Leadership Academy to teach other practices who maybe haven't found that thought leader that really speaks to them, or maybe they want to follow, the path that we have taken. So we started the podcast to try to share some information to be helpful to those of you who are out there who maybe are stressed out, or maybe your practice is sucking the life out of you instead of bringing you life and joy. And so the reason I say that is because we are going through on this vlog and this podcast and answering questions that we're seeing posted out there on Reddit's, message boards, things like that. And it's important to note that we answer our questions through the lens of what I just said, because usually when people post a question on a Reddit or a Facebook group, people start answering, but you don't know these people's priorities. You don't know who these people are. Are they successful? Do they find the same things as important as you do? Are their priorities the same? What about their morals? What's their moral compass look like? And so I like to explain a little bit about our office before I start answering questions. And I'm going to go, then we're going to take a few minutes. I'll answer some of these questions, as many as I can get through today. So what is the best way to decide on suppliers? Now, I'm not the dentist. I'm not the doctor. But I do like this question. Now, some people are going to have a priority on what's the cheapest. And they're going to get their supplies online. They're going to find the cheapest way to buy everything. And that's not really our philosophy. So in my corporate days before I left to come work with Melanie here in the practice, I was a sales manager and trainer. And we practice a type of sales called consultative sales, which is not trying to sell people widgets. It's building a relationship with people, understanding as much as you can about their business, what their priorities are, understanding the corporate landscape, and then sharing knowledge with them to help them be more successful, all while they are purchasing products and services from you. So my philosophy around sales really centers on that type of philosophy, consultative sales. So for us, our biggest thing is what kind of relationship are we going to have with our main supplier? Now, we have bought things from different suppliers over the years. Even if we have a main supplier, there's maybe get a little of this here, a little of this there, or whatever. But we've always had a supplier as our main resource for all of the stuff that we're going to purchase. And what's really important for me is that you have a rep that is really attentive and really tries to help you out. Now, a lot of times supplier reps are order takers. That's the type of rep. You've got consultative sales, you got product demonstrators, you got order takers. And so a consultative salesperson is the person that's there to help you become more successful. They're very knowledgeable. They know about what you're trying to accomplish. And order takers come around, take your orders. Product demonstrators come around and demonstrate a product. They show you a piece of equipment and kind of go through it. So for us, we try to find, we want to have a consultative salesperson type of relationship with our supplier. It's really important because we need our suppliers. There's going to be times when I really need my supplier to help me out. And that relationship's very important to us. And with that being said, price is an issue. I can tell you, we've used one large supplier before, and we just felt like, the prices are too high and they don't really care about the customers the way they used to. It's kind of gotten a little too corporate-y for us. And so we shifted and went with another supplier who we bought stuff from less expensive or cheaper. We got cheaper prices. We had a better relationship and had more personal care from the company. And so even when a rep is really good, if the company is not really focused on the end customer and they're focused more on profits, then that's a tough one for us too. So I really like supplier companies who we have a relationship with, who I feel good about the company and who's going to go out of their way to try to help us out, and also is going to be very fair in their pricing. I would rather have that than the absolute bottom line pricing from an online platform, if that makes sense. All right. Question 2. How do I communicate feedback on the quality of work like dentures, bridges, and etc. with the lab? Probably a better question for the doctor, but I'm going to answer this question also. Over the years, we've used a lot of different labs. That lab relationship is always tricky. Starting with a new lab is never fun. It's kind of like the lab is here and you're here and you have two different styles of dancing and you start dancing together and you have to kind of figure out who's going to put their feet where, so to speak. And that's like doctors and labs kind of getting synced. So we never really like changing labs. Now, for us, similar to what I just said, we like having a relationship with our lab. Now, one of the things with our practice is we have rules. We have rules around products. We have rules around labs. Our product rule is for consumable products like resins or cements, things like that. It is against our rule to ever purchase house brand or generics. We don't do it. We just don't do it. And we know that, and there may be exceptions to this, but we know that for the most part, if it's a house brand or generic and is cheaper, it has less active ingredient and more filler. Go to Dollar General or Walmart and buy the house brand school glue and then buy the Elmer school glue and put it out on paper and see which one's runnier. It's kind of the same thing. And so we're very focused on being a really high quality practice, and our core values are do the right thing and tell the truth. So we can't claim to be a really high quality practice and then put cheap stuff in people's mouths. Now, we're out of network with insurance and we have that capability to do so because we're not doing insurance fees, accepting insurance fees in the office. So for us, that translates to the lab like this. Anytime that we try a new lab, what I will do is I'll talk to the lab owner or possible manager, but for me, it's pretty much an owner. And I say, hey, where do you fabricate your stuff? Do you do anything overseas? Are your designers in-house, or do you send the stuff to be overseas for design? What are the raw materials you use? Because if they use house brand raw materials, then that's not going to qualify for us. And we tried a lab a few years, 10, 15 years ago, and I asked this question to the lab owner, and he goes, oh, we use this house brand raw material for our crowns, and it looks great. Well, it didn't look great, and we didn't use that lab very long. So I had this conversation with the lab, and, for us, I want to know, we don't do, in our practice, we don't do anything overseas. We don't have anything fabricated overseas. We don't use any labs that use cheap supplies. So we use really high quality labs. If you do that, then you're probably going to have a relationship with the lab owner, or at the very least, some sort of quality manager or head lab technician or something like that. And for us, whenever there's an issue with something, we just pick up the phone and call. That will typically happen we typically have a lab coordinator in our practice that quality checks every case and, is the one on the phone with the lab for things. A lot of times the lab has to talk to the doctor. If we start to see something trending, like we start having a few problems, and I personally will call the owner of the lab and go, "Hey, man, we've been having this. Can we talk about this?" And we get on top of it, and it's resolved. It would be great to say you never, ever, ever have a problem, but in a practice like ours, we have 4 doctors. So sometimes there may be something, but once you get like really synced with a lab and they get their computer settings set to your preferences by doctor, usually things go pretty well. So for us, we use that type of lab, and then I have no fear ever calling and going, "Hey, let me share with you what's going on." And so that's our way that we communicate with the lab. And one of the things we did with our lab is when a couple of our younger doctors got started here, we did something like a little communication card, and the doctors would fill it out for every case and send it back, and they were able to use that to like lock in how each individual doctor wanted their cases. Now, if you're using a giant lab for the cheapest price, probably not going to get that type of service or that type of communication. But if you're in network, like a full-blown network office with all the insurances, you're not going to be able to probably use a lab like we use, because they're just a little more expensive. And when you're network with insurance, you really have to manage your costs. So for a large lab, which we have used in the past, especially back when we were in network, we would try to find out who our manager was that managed our account, and then have a communication with them. But that's never as good with a big lab, because people get promoted and move around and all of that, as it is with your smaller or regional lab, where you can really have that relationship even with the owner. So that's how we handle that. In a future podcast, maybe I can get Melanie to talk about this from a dentist perspective. Next question. What is something in your practice that has been 100% worth it? It can be a tech, a tool, a material, or a system. Now, I probably should think about this a little longer. I picked out 3 or 4 questions before this podcast started. So I'm going to answer these. I was like, well, this is an interesting one. So I have not thought through this very long, but I'll tell you a couple of things that come right to my top of mind. Now, we don't even use this company anymore because we're out of network with insurance. But before we dropped insurance and went completely out of network, we had hired a company, and I swear, I don't even remember the name, but they were based out west somewhere. We're in Florida, and they were out maybe in Utah, Colorado, or something like that. And what they did was they managed our claims for us. So we would batch our claims. They would log into our system, go through and do whatever they do, and then they would submit the claims. And then when claims came back, they would receive the claims. And that took all of that off of our administrative staff in our office. And it was really worth it. It cost us a little bit of money, but it was really, really worth it. And they did a really good job. If you're a big network office, if you're not doing that, that's something you may want to look at. That for us was well worth it. Another thing that we've done, and this is really, neither of these are groundbreaking, like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing this incredible wisdom with me. But this was really good too. In the past, we used a company called Paychex. It's Paychex at ADP. They're the big ones. And we used them for years. And then the tax accountant that we had used for years, we don't use anymore, wanted us to go to this payroll system that synced with his accounting firm's software. And it was terrible. And we went with it. We did it for probably 4 or 5 years. And finally, I was like, enough. I'm not doing this anymore. And we ended up, I don't know why we didn't go back to Paychex. But we ended up with ADP. And when we went to ADP, enough time had gone by that we were no longer like calling in like on paychecks. We used to call payroll in. ADP has a great platform. Now, ADP is like every other big company. Your rep could change every week. So I wouldn't say they're the greatest about that. Fortunately for us, we have a rep based up in Georgia that works with our dental CFO company. And so we do have a stable rep. But prior to that, once we went to ADP, we didn't. And ADP can spam the crap out of you with emails and stuff, like trying to get you to buy this, and this. But I will tell you, the platform, the dashboard, everything about ADP is so good, is so easy, and they've got chat support, telephone support. And when we went from the other payroll company into ADP, just a platform, it's just so easy. So that was something that we went to that I really liked. And final question for this one. As a practice manager, do I need to work in the office, or can I handle most things like operations remotely? Well, that depends. If you're getting our advice centers around building a world-class culture, and you can't build a world-class culture with a practice manager that never's in the office. We've done it, and it's, Barb, our office manager, and who's also one of our trainers with Pugh Leadership Alliance, she relocated a few years back and worked for us for probably a couple of years, a year or two, and we had her set up. She did claims in her home out of state, and it just wasn't the same. And when she did it for about a year, and then she ended up going to work in another office in that state because she missed that magic that happens when you're dealing with things and solving problems and interacting with staff and patients. And they ended up relocating back a few years later, and then she came back to us. And what we notice is you have Barb, that office manager, you have me and Melanie as the owners. And if all three of us are gone for any period of time, we have what I call a world-class culture, and our culture will suffer by not having the leaders in the office. And so if I'm a dental owner and I have an office manager that wants to work from home, first question I'm going to ask myself is, if I don't let her, will she quit? How valuable is she would be the second question. So in our case, our office manager, she moved to Kentucky. She can't work in the office. So it's like, hey, well, I want to keep you, so let's try to figure it out. But that's not as good as being in the office. So if you have an office manager that says, I want to work from home, and you say, well, that's not going to work for us, and then they quit, and they were really valuable, well, maybe you should make that work, because our experience has been office managers, the great office manager is like hitting the lottery. So nothing works from home the same way as it does when you have your people there in the office. And so that's my answer to that one. So I hope that these answers or addressing these questions helped you. Maybe if you don't even agree with me, but you have a different philosophy or different things, that's great too. But the philosophy the answer to these questions are very much driven to our business philosophy. Now, at the end of these vlogs, I've been saying, hey, be sure, if you don't mind, it really helps us out if you like this and subscribe it. But those are my answers. Put your answers down in the comments, and I'd love to hear what you have to say or what your ideas are for each of these things. So thank you so much. Appreciate you all for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.